My name is Patrick. Now, since the response sheet is out, now how much you already got a raw score. So whatever you got in your response sheet and you calculated is a raw score. How much can raw score and scale score change? That's what we're looking at. So we're looking at a few data from the previous years and for some of my students, their scores, and then just try to compare like how the scaling happens or how much does the scaling happen. So what you actually score in the exam is a raw score. So whatever you get marks that you actually score, raw score. A scale score is obtained when calculate your percentile, they do the scaling and the scoring is scale. I mean, from the raw score, it can increase or it can decrease based on how people have performed in your slot. If there was a tough paper and people perform low, then people's scores will be scaled up and vice versa. So let's look at how this went. It could vary up to 10 marks or even more than 10 marks in some cases. Okay, it depends on variance and difficult level of different slots. I mean, your slot is tough and the scores are normally scaled up. But slot is easy, scores are scaled down. And each section will have a different scaling. So overall scaling is a sum of each section scaling. So let's try to look at it, right? Overall scaling is sum of section wise. It is possible that higher marks there is a different scaling and lower marks there is different scaling. So in some cases what happens in higher marks there could be a scaling up and lower marks there could be scaling down, possible, but most of the time it is either scaling up throughout for everyone or scaling down throughout for everyone. So let's just collated some data like CAT22. If I look at slot 1, okay, and if I look at how the scaling has happened, so verbal is scaled up. Okay, if you look at a verbal score, 38 has become 46, 26 has become 31, so almost plus 5 out here. Here it is almost plus 8 point something or 9 almost. So there's a huge scaling that has happened as far as verbal is concerned, scaling up in slot 1. Slot 2 also there is scaling. I mean, slot 1 DLR also there is scaling up little bit, but still there is plus 3 mark scaling. If you look at it. Here there is almost 5 mark scaling. So at higher marks there is more scaling, at a lower marks there is less scaling. Whereas Quant, if you look at it, there is a slight scaling down. It's possible that a Quant in slot 1 was slightly on the easier side, therefore there's slight. But overall, there's a massive scaling up. If you look at more than 10 marks out here. Out here also is almost 10 marks scaling. So there is almost a scaling of 10 marks in slot 1. Right? I mean, obviously your scaling will depend upon individual slot scaling. Same as slot 2, if I look at it. The scaling 31 has become 33 scaled up if you look at verbal. Little bit, not as much as slot 1, but there is a scaling. At higher marks, there is more scaling, but there is scaling that is there. DLR, there is a scaling down. I mean, maybe it is easier in slot 2, therefore the scale was down, was scaling down for DLR. Whereas again for Quant, again there was a scaling up. Okay. Overall, scaling up not as much as slot 1. Slot 1 had almost 10 marks scaling. In this case, there is hardly 1 mark, 2 mark scaling which is there, but there is a scaling up which is there, which is 1, 2 marks. If I look at slot 3 again, okay, verbal is scaled down. I mean, marks have gone down, and people have scored actually 46 marks, have scored 42 marks. There is a scaling down as such. Whereas DLR, there is a scaling up if you look at it. 10 marks has scored 12.13, 24 has scored 30. Obviously, higher marks has higher scaling. So there is a scaling up, right? Quant, again, there is scaling up little bit, but there is still a scaling up which has happened everywhere. Little small scaling up. So overall, there is a scaling up or down based on what have you scored higher marks. So if you look at 89 has become 91.8, which is a scaling up which has happened. But 95 has scored 93.93, which is a scaling down that has happened. Same slot, one scaling up, one scaling down based on where. Because this 95% has scored very high in verbal, which has scaled down, therefore his marks has gone down. Whereas if you look at this 89 guy has scored high in DLR, which is scaled up, therefore his scaling has gone up. That's the scaling. So I've collated all the data for all the 3 slots out here to get you the sum. Let's look at CAT21 also, just to understand how it happens. CAT21 also, if you look at, verbal is scaled up, DLR is scaled up, Quant scaled down, overall scaled up. So if you look at it, there is a scaling up has happened in both these cases. Okay, but Quant there is a scaling down a bit. Overall, there is a scaling up, so almost 3-4 marks which is scaled up in terms of getting your percentile. Okay, same if you look at slot 2, there has been a scaling down that has happened. So verbal is scaled up, okay, but in DLR and Quant there is a scaling down. Possibly the scores or the paper toughness was slightly easier than the other slots. So therefore there is a scaling down. So overall, if you look at, there has been a scaling down and 3-4 marks scaling down, which is considerable. And slot 3 in CAT21, if you look at, again, verbal scaled down, but DLR and Quant has scaled up. So because of which overall there is a scaling up. So these two, you will get a fair idea as to how the scaling happens. This is the overall marks of CAT21 students. So you will get a fair idea how the scaling happens. So there can still be a drastic change of 10-12 marks which can happen. Normally in most cases, if you look at, there is a scale up, but there's also a chance there is a slight scale down, 1-2 marks overall scaling down. My suggestion is keep your fingers crossed. Let's wait for the final scorecard to come out. If you have scored low marks, just wait for your final scorecard to come out, because based on that, your scaling your percentile will come out. The different classes will come out with different percentiles, but that is not very reliable. I mean, they come out with based on their data, but that data is comparatively small as compared to the overall data. So you'll have to wait for the final results to come out, scorecard, to get the actual picture. But this will give you a fair idea as to how the scaling happens. Right? Fine. All the best for your results.